Alrighty, good morning, everyone. Tigo, we have everyone admitted and we are recording, so we will turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thanks for having me join this call today. I look forward to presenting Transact. For those that don't know me, my name is Dan Fortin. I'm the product director over at Lone Wolf. Actually came from the transaction desk world, so I've been on transaction desk since 2014. So I've definitely seen some of your staff come and go that I've interacted with over the years. Today, I'm going to show you Transact. This is the evolution of Transaction Desk, and this is part of your member benefit right now. So I'm going to walk through transaction creation, form filling, signing, and then how these documents get submitted for review to the brokerage. So the offering that you all have is our broker edition version of this. And for those that do utilize those features today, that's things like office templates, office checklists, broker file review, the ability to see office transactions, and so on. So I'm going to dive right in here. So what you're looking at is the Transact screen. So as a broker, who I'm in the system as a broker right now, I'm going to have all these options that are related to things like reviews, templates, checklists, etc. Whereas an agent, they're only going to really see transactions, deal tracker, and their signings. They won't be able to manipulate checklists. Now, to get this all started, I'm going to walk first through a checklist creation screen, then how we wire up your template, and then how that applies to a transaction. And then I'm going to go through a submission of a transaction, and then how you ultimately review that document to reject or approve signatures. So to get started, I'm actually going to pop over here and create a new checklist. So one of the things that we did differently in this new system versus Transaction Desk is we wanted to optimize the checklist submission flow for agents. We realized people struggled. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I was just reading the comments there. We realized that agents were struggling a bit trying to submit documents by hitting the bell icon or knowing when to submit documents. Also, there's comments about being able to relay back to the agent that the document or the file is in review or that the file is complete. So with this version, we introduce what we call this file submission wizard. So for example, I could go ahead and create a checklist. I can create the ownership as office, and then if you're attached to more than one office, I can attach it to both offices, or I can attach it to a single office. So if you have regional offices, you can set different checklist types up for them. I can also choose which phase I want to trigger it under. So the idea here is that the agent, all they have to do is get in there, fill out the paperwork, get it signed, and then just hit the under contract button when the time's ready. And then the system's going to guide them through how to submit the actual documents to their brokerage. Once I go into the checklist builder, on the right is what the agent's going to see when they interact with this wizard versus the left is what the broker or the office admin can configure for their office. So today, you guys can capture paperwork. So if you only want to capture paperwork, that's totally an option. You can only enable one of these steps. Or if you want to capture more than just paperwork, you can actually enable multiple steps here. So for example, I might want the signed purchase agreement. I cannot spell purchase today, apparently. You might want a copy of the listing, and then maybe that's signed buyer rep agreement. Now you'll notice on the right, this is what the agent's actually going to interact with once they hit under contract. So we're going to guide them through a three-step wizard here, and then we'll be able to allow them to attach those documents fairly easily. I can also do things like attach parties. So for example, I can't remember if New Mexico is a title company or if it's a lawyer state, but those are one of those things that brokers are constantly chasing their agents for. Who's the title company? Who's the closing lawyer? And that usually comes after the transaction's been submitted. So in this version, you can actually require certain parties as they're submitting the paperwork for your review. That way you can just capture it up front. And all of these contact types here, they populate directly on our real estate forms. So if they fill out the forms or they fill out the transaction, regardless, it's going to reverse populate back into the checklist submission. I can also capture details. So if I want to make sure the address is there, I want to make sure that the purchase price is captured. maybe the legal description. You could require all those fields. And again, whatever's populated in these fields, we're going to capture it and populate back into the checklist submission. So now that we've got this checklist built out, you could see on the right that once an agent marks it under contract, they're going to go through a paperwork flow, they're going to go through a parties flow, and then they're going to go through a details flow. So it's really easy for the agent to follow along. Once you have that checklist created, you can also relate it to more than just under contract. So for example, you can also tag it to a fell through phase. So if it follows through, maybe you want to get that mutual release form filled out and signed and captured, etc. So you can capture more than just the under contract events. Going into the templates. So again, I could go ahead and create a transaction template in the system. And again, it's very similar to the checklist itself. So I can choose ownership. Again, I could choose office and then choose any offices that I wish. So again, if you're part of multiple offices, because you run 4 or 5 of them, you can create this template and apply it to them all, or you can make it regional if one office uses a different set of forms than the other. I can also auto apply this template. This is something Transaction Desk did not have, but with this system, if I auto apply this to purchase transactions, whenever an agent creates a purchase transaction, we're actually going to just auto apply this template. So all the paperwork, parties, tasks, and checklists will just automatically come through. And then that way the agent doesn't necessarily have to choose it. I'm not going to auto apply this one because I already have one set up, but that's available to all different transaction types. From here, this is where I can actually set up the template itself. So really bare minimum, you might do something like client docs, offer docs, and then you could go ahead and add paperwork within here. So if I want to add the purchase agreement, oops, put that in the wrong one. And then maybe I want to do the buyer rep agreement. Now, obviously, this is uh, nowhere near what you'd normally see in a template. This is just obviously a very basic example, but you can structure this, organize it whatever way you want. And you can upload more than just forms. You can also upload your own PDFs. So if you have brochures or whatever, you can apply them right to the transaction. That will automatically come over as agents are applying or creating these transactions. Here I can also go ahead and add parties. So for example, if I have a preferred vendor, for example, maybe I always want, the same title company to always be applied. I could go ahead and pre-fill these parties out. And again, when agents apply their transactions, that information is naturally going to come over and pre-fill those forms. I could also build out full-on task lists. So I could go ahead and apply whatever task list I want. I think the most famous one's probably the obtain 7-day financing. Perhaps I want that to be relative to a transaction date. With a reminder maybe 2 days before. When I apply this to a transaction, again, whether they fill out the details or they just go straight into form filling, which a lot of them do, that stuff will reverse populate back into the transaction and it's going to pre-fill these dates automatically. And then that way, as soon as this is applied, they're going to get that reminder to verify if 7-day financing is coming through. That way you can gauge whether or not this transaction is going to fall through. And then the final piece here is just attaching checklists. So as I said, you could apply checklists both at the under contract level, and you could also add checklists at various different stages, such as the fell through level. So here, for example, if that agent hits under contract, they're going to get one checklist that they have to submit documents for. If it falls through, you can actually prompt them for a completely different set of documents. So it gives you a lot of control as a brokerage on how to collect paperwork from agents. And then it makes it really easy for agents to know which paperwork to submit to the brokerage. That way, it will kind of reduce some of that email communication going back and forth or chasing around to see if you got the right documents within the transaction. Now that we got our templates and checklists set up, this is where I'm going to go ahead and actually create a transaction. So here I'm going to put on my agent hat and just kind of guide through what they're going to interact with. So once I go ahead and create a transaction, again, since I'm a broker, I'm going to see additional options here that an agent doesn't have. As a broker, I can actually create transactions on behalf of an agent without having to impersonate them. And then I can also specify which office I'm going to create the transaction under. So if you are in multiple offices, you can actually populate the office information a little bit more dynamically. versus today where it just grabs it from your primary office. But as an agent, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick purchase. Here I can see that one of my office templates are already applied. You can even see which template is in that, or what is in within that template. In addition, I can actually go ahead and add my own personal templates to this screen as well. So here, this came from my own personal template. I could actually choose whether or not to remove or keep that form. So the example there is if I have like my own template, maybe I have a whole bunch of optional paperwork. Maybe one has a lead-based paint disclosure, but this property is fairly new. I could actually just remove that paper, lead-based paint disclosure. I'm going to remove that since it's the personal template. And then here I can also import MLS data. So in New Mexico today for Transaction Desk, we will actually display everything that you see in your TD accounts today when it comes to MLS sources. So whether you're in Albuquerque or Santa Fe or et cetera, you're going to see the same MLS data sources that you use today. I didn't have time to set up in a New Mexico one, so we're going to look at some cold properties in Alaska, uh, which might be a benefit to you all since it is summer there. It's probably pretty hot. Um, Once I go and import that property, this is going to go ahead and bring in all the information that you're used to today. So you can see we're going to bring in the legal description, any of the property information that's relevant. And this is really dependent on the MLS source itself. All MLS sources kind of have their own different rules or sets of what we can bring in. Going to the offer area, this is totally optional, but maybe you're working with your buyer or seller, they have an ideal closing date. You could go ahead and set that right now. For the sake of this, I'm just going to go ahead and punch in some numbers here. And then parties. So just like today, we're going to try to bring in any listing agent information that's on that listing, as well as any seller information. And then you can go ahead and add whatever information you wish. I did see a question in there about property tax data. You can also import property tax data. So if you have like Realist or CRS or whatever set up right now, that will also come in through here, and then you could do property tax lookups. That way, if you're starting a listing or something like that, you can get that legal information or the property description. Here, I'm going to go ahead and add my buyer. So we're going to add Finley buyer. Finley's the name of my toddler. I just want him to buy all the houses in North America. He's on a buying spree these days. Once I go ahead and create the transaction, this is going to go ahead and bring me onto the transaction details page. Now, a couple things here, a couple differences from what you saw on the TD side. Before we started doing this, we actually put heat maps up everywhere in Transaction Desk and even zip forms because we wanted to understand where people were truly clicking. People spent maybe 30 milliseconds on the details page. Most of the time they didn't even make it out of the wizard before they went directly into their forms. So in this version, we're actually going to just default you directly on the paperwork tab. So I can actually just jump right into a form and start filling it out. That said, things like details and parties are still available on the transaction screen. It's just not the first place that people are going. The other thing that we did is we combined PDFs and forms together. So instead of having them separated out, which made it really difficult to do something like just email a form and a PDF at the same time, I can actually go ahead and do that all at the same time now. From here, so a couple things to note. I have the paperwork tab. Again, I can add whatever PDFs, whatever forms I want. I can also fill in multiple forms at the same time. So for example, here, once I select multiple of them, I can take multiple actions such as the editor. As soon as I go into the forms editor, this is going to bring me into the new form editor look and feel.
Hey, Dan, can I pause you really quick? There's another question.
Sure.
So we have a question here is I saw deposit on that page of dates and basic transaction information you filled in. Maybe I missed it, but where can you add or revise input info to that page?
So right now we just have, I'm just going to back out of here for a moment. So right now, these are all the details you can fill out on the transaction itself. And then this is the party information. Now, if we need to add additional fields for New Mexico, it's really easy for us to do that. So perhaps what we can do is connect with the New Mexico or the New Mexico staff, and then just gather any other details we want to add in there. The good news is whatever forms populate or map on the transaction desk side, we can easily do it on this side as well. So there is no loss of functionality there.
I think you answered the second part of that question as well. Thank you.
So once I'm in the forms editor, this is where I can also fill out multiple forms at the same time. In Transaction Desk, I could do one at a time, but we recognize that agents don't work that way. A lot of times they're going to send form packages off. So here I can actually fill out multiple forms in one go. So in the middle here, this is obviously where my form is. I can jump easily between two forms as I'm clicking at the top. I can also bring PDFs in here as well. So if I want to bring in a floor plan or anything like that, I can bring as many documents as I can. Now, navigating through the document itself, we've also added a few form filling features that have been optimized. So for one, we've added what we call subforms. So unlike today in TD where you kind of had to navigate between the different fields, I can actually just go ahead and add a by or two. Once I do that, we're going to put it all in one nice neat line there for you. That's comma separated versus the spacing that you see today. Same thing with property addresses. Here I can easily go ahead and add whatever I need to. So maybe this one has a unit number. Once I focus out, it's going to put that information in there all nice and neat. We also addressed a whole bunch of stuff when it comes to auto sizing as well. It will never auto size below 5 point font size, especially when you're dealing with the text areas. So that way it's always going to be eligible. Once I'm ready to go ahead and prepare for assigning, oh, I see there's another question here. I'm assuming you're talking about the supplement documents on the MLS. If we import supplement documents today via the MLS feed, we will continue doing it today in Transact. That's how I actually got these 3 PDFs that came in through that MLS import. So it really just depends on the MLS feed itself if they allow us to bring in the media objects. Once I'm ready to prepare signing, this is where I can go and send it to Authentisign. This is the same Authentisign that's used in Transaction Desk. It was actually one of the first modules we rebuilt to modernize. So this is going to look very similar to what you use today. And all your eSign layouts and templates, they're all still available. So they'll all work right out of the box. So here I have my purchase agreement. I'm going to go ahead and add Finley as a buyer. Add my email. So once he's in here, you'll see that we automatically apply all the signature and initial blocks all throughout the form, just like you would expect today. That way you really don't have to do too much to send this off. In addition to that, I can also sign this myself before sending it off. So in case you do have to sign it, you can always go to Tools, go to Myself. I can drag a signature block on there. And that way I could just drop my signature in here and then I don't have to send myself an email. This has actually been a feature that's been around for a while, but I always like to point it out because I don't think too many people are aware that it exists. But that just speeds up so you don't have to send yourself any email invites. Once the signatures are sent, this is where I'm going to be redirected back into the transaction. So now it's in a sent status. Once it's signed, we're going to automatically copy that signed document back into the paperwork area with a signed status, which I'll show you in a second. The other things to point out here too is we also we do display the compliance tab. So those that are a little bit more adventurous when it comes to the transaction, they can still come in and interact with these checklist items versus those that are just going to want to use the wizard, which I'll show you in a second. The to-dos, this is where we're going to show you all the tasks that are in the template. So you can see here, as soon as I put in a listing expiration date, this will automatically populate. And then we also display the timeline view. This will be an aggregation of any tasks and transaction dates all in one view. That way it's just really easy to see any key critical dates that are in this transaction and when they're going to potentially fall on a weekend. And then finally, the history area. This is always the boring section until you deal with a subpoena or you have to deal with a regulator, but we are pretty robust in tracking everything that happens within the transaction. And just like today, you can also go ahead and export this to an offline copy. So this will turn into a zip file. It'll have all the documents, transaction details, etc. in there. That way, if you ever need to store it or hand it over to someone, it's really easy to extract it from the system. Now going back to the paperwork tab, there's two things that we introduced with this new version. One, it's to deal with fallen through rejected offers a little bit easier, and then to deal with document submissions easier. So for example, let's say I have this transaction, we make an offer on Felicia Street and they reject our offer. Once I hit offer rejected, we're going to bring you to a reset and copy details screen. From here, I can choose anything that I want to keep. So for example, we know you're not going to be working with the same property or offer details, so we're going to unselect that. Perhaps I don't want to deal with or have these folks on my transaction parties anymore. I can go ahead and remove them. And then I could choose whatever documents I want. So for example, if this was a signed purchase agreement, I don't need it for this transaction. But if this is the signed buyer rep agreement, I'm going to keep it. That way I can keep my buyer rep agreement front and center as I navigate through transactions without losing it in the first transaction. And then I could just move on quickly to the next transaction. So here you can see I have a lost deals area now. Everything I did with that transaction, it's still all intact. I can continue working it. If it was a fallen through, I could do mutual release forms, etc. It is still its own transaction. But now I have my main transaction that I'm moving on to next. So that way I could go ahead and start importing the next listing, and then I could start writing an offer right away. So it makes it really easy to move between transactions versus today where if I'm working with a buyer, we make 10 offers on a property. I'm assuming you're going to have 10 transactions in your list today, where the first one has that buyer rep agreement and the 10th one has that final purchase agreement. Um, once it has been rejected, now here, like for example, I can move on to the next offer, and you can see all the supplement docs that came in with that particular MLS. But perhaps I haven't been able to find the next property I want to make an offer on. I can also open this and then reopen it. Perhaps, the buyer on the other side fell through and the listing agent came back and wants to know if I'm still interested. I go ahead and easily just reopen it. It's going to ask me to do something with that other transaction. And then I can make this my primary transaction again, and then just continue off exactly where I left off. And to answer your question, Beverly, nothing's ever lost in this system. So you'll notice, like, as I navigate between these two, they are their own transactions essentially. So any purchase agreements are still going to all be within there. We just made it easier so that you can navigate through your follow throughs. So for example, if I go back to my list here, you can see all of the activity we've done under this. And this is where you'll hear us call this as client-driven transaction management. The idea is that, for example, if this was Finley and we did 10 offers, it's all nested under Finley's card versus having 10 cards across the board. So it just makes it easier to manage and navigate. Now, the other thing here is once it's accepted, when they hit offer accepted, this is where we're going to bring you through the file submission wizard. So here at this point, if they have the signed purchase agreement, they could go ahead and add it. If I'm just going to put these random documents in here. I have another transaction ready to show the review. But this is where they're going to fill in any of the required documents that you inputted into the checklist. They're going to add anything that's missing. So for example, this one was missing a seller here. Then I can also input any details that are missing. And then this will now send it for review. So here, everything's submitted. You can see my compliance checklist has been filled out. And we'll show you the review state. Now, as an agent, I don't have to do anything else anymore at this point. I'm just going to keep working the deal, make sure everything's getting ready for closing, make sure any conditions are removed from the contract. And at this point, the broker now has this in their review queue. So going over to the review area, this is where the broker or the office admin, they're going to see all the available transactions submitted for review. We introduced a kind of a board view. That way you can see everything that's from not submitted to pending review to needs corrections to approved. Now, not submitted means that they hit under contract, but they exited out of the wizard. We just want to make sure that the office is aware that something is happening on here. And that way you always have the ability to go back and take a look at it. Beverly, the slice and markup is actually in the forms editor. So hang tight on that one. I'm going to show you where that is. But you do have markup capabilities and slicing. Teams, so teams, they could do things like share groups, which is existing in TD today. So they can share transactions with each other. We have not introduced a broker file review flow for Teams as of today, but that is something that we can always take a look into as an additional feature there. Right now, it's based off of you being basically a broker or an office admin or having that permission to do the broker file review. Now, doing a review itself, once I open up the transaction, this is where you're going to see all of the documents that are ready for review. Actually, here, let me try this one instead. So this is one that I was doing earlier. So here, for example, I can come in, I can see all the documents that are submitted. On the right, I can see everything at a glance in terms of parties, offer, and details. I can even change information here if I need to. But at this point, I could start comparing the document with my transaction. So for example, is the legal description matching between the two? As I'm reviewing the document, I can highlight as well where things are missing. So for example, I highlighted here that seller's missing initials. And then that way, if anyone else has to review it in addition to me, they can easily see where things are missing. And here is where we also can note where things are missing on that file. So if you have multiple people reviewing the same document, I can come in here, I can resolve the doc or the transaction document comment or keep it unresolved. From here, I can go through the whole flow and then mark or approve, reject or approve the document. So here, perhaps it is fully approved. I can go ahead and approve that. I can move on to the next checklist document item and go ahead and approve that. We are working on something called Review with AI. It's not fully ready to demonstrate here, but the idea is we're also going to do an automated check to see if there's any missing signatures and initials proactively. That way, if you have a large set of documents, you can do that as a first pass and then start looking at the document itself. Once I'm done reviewing the transaction file, I can do one of two things. One, I can notify the agent. Perhaps there's stuff missing within this transaction. I want the agent to come back and fill in that particular paperwork. So I can go ahead and fill whatever message out I want here. Or I can mark the whole file as approved. So once I do that, it's going to mark the file as approved. I don't necessarily have to approve every document in here. I can mark the file as a whole. And then when I come back, that file will now be marked over in the approved state. I can even go one step further and go into the transaction. I can mark it closed, and now that will prevent edits to that transaction as well. Now, in terms of the transaction list itself, so this is the office transaction view. Again, I'm a broker admin, so you're going to see all of the the TD transactions, all of the transactions that have been done in my office. I could do two different views. I can actually flip over to a table view, so I can see which agent has created it, a high level details about the transaction, or I could stay on the card view itself. By default, we'll actually default agents to a card view versus a table view. Table view is more of the office admin side. I can also do things like create my own custom filters. So if I want to see everything closing in 30 days, I can actually filter that down exactly in that view. I can save my own views. So you have quite a bit of different filter options that you can leverage there. And then that way, each day when I come in, I can really slice and dice the list whatever way I want. The other thing to mention is if you also came over from Transaction Desk or ZipForms, you can actually connect both of them on here. I can actually pop over to the Transaction Desk tab, and I can even see all the TD transactions in my TD account. I'm wired into a test office, so forgive me for the transaction names, but the idea here is not only can I manage my office transactions in Transact, I can also manage my office transactions in TD and Zip all in the same time. And I can even jump into the broker file review on the TD side. So if you have some of them still using TD or Zip, some of them using still Transact, you can still manage all that activity in one view. And then I guess the final view here is just is the deal tracker itself. So here it's just a different view of how you can see all your transactions laid out. But I can see everything from active clients to under contract to closed. One of the things we're working on is bringing in as many CRM integrations as we can, so we can populate things like warm and hot prospects that can be fed in from a CRM. And if you also have the accounting software wired up, you could also see your accounting numbers all displayed on one screen. And then that way you can just kind of manage it and move those transaction files from the board, from one side of the board to the other. That is pretty much Transact in a nutshell. Now, to get back to things like Transaction Desk, you would use what we call our app switcher. Or if you wanted to explore the other products that are brought into this platform ecosystem, we do relay them all within here. So for example, if you connected your Cloud CMA, you could even jump into your CMA product really quickly from here. Or if you use Spaceo or Front Office or whatever, they're all accessible through this app switcher. And then you really just need one login to access all these tools versus using multiple logins today. Oh, sorry, Beverly, I almost forgot. You wanted to see the markup tools and the slicing. So if I come into the transaction into the form editor, here's where I almost want to call this a document editor. So if I check this off, you'll notice that we have this split and rotate feature. Once I click this, of course, I picked a document with one page. But once I pick this, if I have multiple thumbnail images here, I'll have dotted lines with scissors so I can actually cut them up really easily and slice them out. You could still rotate left, right, create additional PDFs. And then in terms of markups, we have all the available markup tools here. So if I want to do things like strike through, I can go ahead and start striking through. We introduce what we also call the draw mode, so you don't have to keep going back and forth and striking it out. I can just strike out as much as I want. And you can do things like change the font color, or you can change the settings within here. So if I always want blue, for example, I could go ahead and do that and hit save as default. And then going forward, every markup I do going forward will have blue. We also have document merging, which is on the document page. That's where you just select the two and then you can merge them together. So we still allow you to do the slicing, the merging, and then also the markups. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and open up to any questions or comments out there that you might all have.
Thank you for that. If anybody's got questions, if they want to just jump in, since we don't have a huge group here, and we've got some hands up. So yeah, Baro, go ahead.
Yes, so the majority of the people, I don't know how many people are in here, but the majority of people who use our forms tend to be associate brokers, not QBs. I'd like to see a lot more offered in terms of how the associate broker uses forms and fills them out and sends them out and does all of that, whereas most of this presentation was for a qualifying broker or an office manager. So if we could get more information on that from the point of view of what Dan would call an agent, not the broker.
Yeah, I'm happy to touch on that. So with the broker file review that I was displaying there, all this stuff is really just permission based. Behind the scenes, we have different role types where we've enabled disable permissions that we basically populate you from based off of a roster sync. But in terms of an agent's going to see a lot of the same things as what I just displayed to you today. So obviously an agent's going to be able to see things like the create transaction flow here. They're not going to see the create on behalf of agent. They're going to see things like, if they're part of two offices, which office do you want to associate it to? Which listing data you want to import. So here, if I have a tax source, I could populate via that way, or whatever MLS sources have been integrated into your TD account. Same thing with the MLS side. This is where, again, I can import any MLS listing data that will populate the real estate forms. Now, I'm just going to skip ahead of these few detail screens here, but obviously you can fill that out as you go. But where the agent's really going to be living, they're going to really be living in this paperwork area. Mm-hmm. So here, like I can come into the purchase agreement itself. And this is where I can just start filling out the form as in its whole or add additional paperwork. And then that way I could go ahead and send that over to signatures. So here, like for example, I can go ahead and zoom into the document if I wish. I could start filling out the forms just like you do today. So if you use clauses, for example, I can go ahead and actually create my own clauses. So here, for example, I made a terrible clause, but it's called sewer inspection. But this is where you can create even dynamic clauses as an agent. So I can make it, you know how today a lot of people use underscores to kind of denote which variables they want in there. I could do things like add date and timestamps and drop downs. And then the idea here is when I insert one of these clauses and then choose that sewer inspection, I could just easily select those variables and then go ahead and just apply it to my clause. That's going to add the clause right on the multi-line field itself. And then really here it's just a matter of just filling out that form. Everything that you're kind of used to today is going to exist. So things like calculation scripts, if it's on there, mutual exclusive checkboxes, date formats, all that stuff is still available. Everything that, brings that form filling experience. As I'm filling out the form as well, things that we added on terms of the agent's behalf is just being able to see like the transaction details as a whole. In the beginning, when I said agents didn't spend a whole lot of time on the details page when they were creating a transaction, they were going straight to the forms. It was when they were in the forms, they actually wanted to go back to the details page because they wanted to do things like copy the legal description and reference it in an addendum field somewhere, or they wanted to see like which parties are part of the transaction. So here, this is where the details mattered most. And from what we were able to collect in talking to agents, and then we present that all in one view so you could easily fill that out. Same thing with markup tools. Again, if I need to watermark this thing, call it confidential or draft, maybe I'm doing a mock-up purchase agreement because I want to go show the buyer what, this purchase agreement could potentially be. You could watermark everything within here. And then in terms of being able to print or download, so again, I can print or download directly from here. I can email that directly out, whether that is a link or an attachment. Or like what I showed with Authentisign, I could hit prepare signing and just fire that right off into Authentisign to get that sign through that experience. Or if I need to, I can also just print the document. So if I want to print that and then, print it off or download it to my own computer, all that information is also going to be populated directly onto that document. The other nice part too, this is kind of one of those features that both agents and brokers benefit from. We've also introduced form versioning. And what I mean by that, and you guys have probably experienced this over the years, when you create a transaction template, you build out all your forms in the template, and then we get the new version of forms, and then we go ahead and update them. And then you'll get that message that some forms are out of date in your template and you have to go update them. Here we have form versioning, so you won't have to do that any longer. We'll just always bring in the latest version of the form when you create a transaction while keeping your existing forms intact. So any previous transactions is still going to have that, that historical trail that you can follow. And then the other thing to mention on the agent side is we do also allow you to continue sharing with each other. We know this is a really important feature. So here, like I can go ahead and share to someone. I can go ahead and add my share group. I can see who's in that share group. And then once I hit save, they'll now have access to that transaction as well. So if you do a lot of sharing, co-listing, that stuff is all still very much available to you. And I guess the last piece I want to touch on is the transaction transfer feature. This is where, an agent moves from one office to the other. And today the broker will keep the original transaction. The agent gets that email with all the transactions in it. And then sometimes there's a couple hundred in there. And it's quite time consuming to download them all. In this version, when we initiate that same flow, we'll actually create a snapshot of the transaction. We'll put it in the agent's archive area. And then from here, the agent could either restore it as a full transaction if they need it for whatever reason, or they can download the offline version of it. And then that way the agent gets a copy, the broker has the original, and then they don't have to keep those emails or try to download all those links all at once. So that was also a real nice to have to throw in there. And then in terms of the agent flow, you're really going to be working out of the deal tracker, transactions, and signings. So just like today in Transaction Desk, I can come here and view all of my signings. And I could do things like search by Authentisign ID. It's one of those features that sounds, boring at the time until you actually need it. But when you have to go and look at a signing that's 4 years old, it's super handy to be able to just search by the Authentisign ID and get that document. And just like today, you can also create signings outside of a transaction. So you can use signings for whatever you want. This thing is an e-sign compliant solution. So you could actually use this more than just real estate documents, but all that's available to you. And then the last thing to touch on the agent side, just like how I can see all my office transactions here, as you come over from Transaction Desk or Zip Forms, you'll actually be able to see all of your transactions in here as well. So if you're working on a transaction mid-flight and you come over here and you need to go back in, all you need to do is click on it. We're going to redirect you back into transaction and do a deep link view. Here, you can do anything you can in TD today. So you can finish up that transaction, submit it for review, whatever, and when you're done, you can go right back into the Transact experience. And these documents are always going to be available to you, so you'll be able to always come in and capture them. Hopefully, I'm hoping that answered some of your questions on there on what that agent flow is going to look like.
Yes, thank you.
You're
That was helpful. I've got a whole rapid fire list, but Beverly, you go ahead.
Oh, you know, I've got a whole list.
Oh, I
to
know
go.
you
Thank
do.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you go back into any transaction that you have in Transact, please? Like the one you just created for Finley?
Yep.
And on your documents that or forms that I want to add to the transaction, will you add to that transaction? I want to walk through this because I sell real estate and I'm also a QB. So I want to add to this a form called 5101.
Okay. So is that 5101 the name of the form?
No, that's the number, just 5101. Yeah, there it is. Just add that. Oh, okay. So my question was going to be last year when I did a 2-hour Zoom call with Jonathan from Transact, you could only have one 5101 in the folder. You could not have another one. You'd have to overtype them. So now I've got 4 addenda that I can bring in. Would you bring in 5142, please? We have to have about 20 of those.
One
And
thing
they're
that
all
we're
gonna
gonna
say different things.
Yeah, Beverly, one thing that we're going to add in here, because I know exactly where you're going with that one. We have a feature that's coming out, I think actually like within the next week or two. We're going to allow you to add these forms as many times as you want.
Okay, perfect. That was my first question. Okay, my next question is, I noticed on your template that you had, like on the first page of the purchase agreement, it would have a default, like you're going to put a date. Some of our fields are both alpha and numeric. You'll be able to do that with our staff at NMAR, right? So that fields can be both numbers or, for example, I'll just give you an example, warranty policy at a cost not to exceed. You don't always know how much the cost is going to be. So you might want to put to be determined. You don't want to put in a dollar amount. So I want to make sure that you work with our staff to make things both alpha and numeric.
Yeah, so another good news item there, Beverly. You're actually on the good question. We're going to add an option. So when you focus in on those fields, we're going to allow you to overwrite that validation. So if you have a date that you need to put something else in, or like currency, I've seen that quite a bit with currency as well. We're going to allow you to overwrite either one of those. However, for the time being, if you need to overwrite, you can also use the tools menu, the text box,
and
then
add a text box, right?
Yeah, you can overwrite it that way too.
We're doing that now, but at any rate, so I just want to make sure. Okay, you had mentioned that if I wanted to add the legal description or something like that, if I'm entering a file, like right now our MLS, I'm looking at an MLS sheet in the MLS search engine. I'm not in Transaction Desk yet. If there's a little scroll, I can click on it and it'll automatically take me to Transaction Desk, auto-populate everything from the MLS, legal description, the seller's name, all the forms. It'll automatically auto-populate it and take me right to the wizard. And I am one of those crazy people who actually does use the wizard. And so what you were showing us was something done outside of that, correct? That's why you had to select to add the legal description?
So if you're using that MLS flow, and you're definitely not alone, that's a really highly used feature in our systems because it's so easy to get into our systems via that way. We do support that still with Transact. I just didn't have I didn't have an MLS to show it from.
That's okay. That's okay. Will we have more options on the watermark other than confidential and draft like we do now? Transact has about 4 or 5.
We can definitely add more. They're not difficult to add. We just started with confidential and draft at first because those are the primary ones we were being seen.
Okay,
used.
that's totally fine. Okay, I only have 2 more. Probably only 2 more questions. I apologize. I don't want to dominate this, but I was making notes while you were talking. Can I send a adverse material facts form, which is our seller's disclosure? Can I send that to the seller to fill out, save, walk away, go home, find out information, go back to the form and add that information, or do they have to start all over again? Right now, I can send it as a editable link, I think link is the right term, in Transaction Desk. They can fill it in, They get a drop-down menu just like I do that says save. They save it. I get notified they've opened the form. I can go look at it now. We can talk about it, and then I can send it to them for signature. Last year, the only way that could happen is if I sent it to them in AuthentiSign and dropped in edit fields, text fields, check boxes. I would have had to create like a template, and people don't always have something to say, and sometimes what they have to say takes up too much room. And so I want to make sure that we can continue to do what we can in Transaction Desk by sending things that they could fill in
Yeah,
and come
excellent,
back to.
excellent question. So you're talking about sending the form as an editable link.
Yeah,
And we always find that property disclosures are kind of handled in two ways, depending on the state that you're working with. Sounds like in New Mexico, we have like a form fillable version of that. Some areas we've done an e-sign version of that where they have to do it through the e-sign flow and sign it at the same time to prevent anyone else from filling out the form. But that all being said, do you see this client portal access piece
Yes.
here? So
Yes.
one of the things we were going to do, so if I wanted to invite Finley in, for example, to see a very limited view of my transaction, I can invite them in. I can give them a PIN. So one nice part about this is you can actually secure those links a little bit better. That way only the person that's intended for can see it. And then one of the options that we're going to be adding very soon here is the ability to edit. And then we're going to show you all the paperwork within the transaction. Then you could choose which ones they can edit. And then they'll be able to edit it through the exact same form editor flow as you would experience in Transact. So to simulate exactly what TD did there.
Okay, perfect. You didn't do that last year, so perfect. Thank you. And then you had mentioned that when a new version comes out, it won't affect old versions. There used to be a guy named Scott at Transaction Desk years ago, and
Scott Marino?
I don't know his last name, but Scott, he and I had conversations about if I have an associate who's preparing an offer today on a listing, it doesn't matter whose, they're preparing it today, but the buyer hasn't gotten pre-qualified yet, so they haven't finalized writing the offer, they haven't sent it out for signature, and tomorrow a brand new purchase agreement version comes out in our forms library. I want to make sure they can no longer fill out the one they started filling out on the March 2026 version. I want to make sure they are now filling out the August 2026 version. So when you talked about it wouldn't change it, as a broker, it's got to change it. I can't let my associates, I could let my associates use old forms, but I don't want them to. I want them to use the most current form. It's highly unlikely that somebody would start a purchase agreement last week and the form changes this week. Highly unlikely. They would just have a form they're waiting to finalize for more than a day. But that was something that Scott felt like, well, you don't want them to lose everything they did. Well, I don't care. You know, I want them using current forms.
So that one we could definitely go two routes on. So for example, let me ask you another question. If you have a transaction, let's say it's like 3 years old and there's a form filled out there, but you have the signed PDF, everything's closed, whatever, and we introduce a new form, would you want that 3-year-old transaction to have the updated form as
No.
well?
No, not at all. Not an old transaction, but one that hasn't even gotten signed yet. Like they're working on the purchase agreement for, that's the form that seems to change, you know, most often. And our changes are usually very necessary. And so I don't want them to use yesterday's purchase agreement because it doesn't have the necessary updates that today's purchase agreement does.
Dan, it's overwriting existing forms in a current transaction that have not been executed yet, if there's a form change.
Yeah, we'll have to take that one offline because we don't know exactly what is a closed transaction unless someone's actually physically moved it.
I see. Okay. And
You know what I mean?
Oftentimes my brokers they'll identify, you know, they close them out all the time. Like, oh, this one's done, this one's canceled, this one's, you know, they change the labels often, not every single time. But I'm very concerned because of what you said about it's not going to change anything they've already done. But if they haven't sent it for signatures yet, I definitely want it to be the most current version. And then when you talked about sharing, one of the last things you talked about is, you know, inviting somebody into your group. That was and I think Cass might be on this call. That is a transaction coordinator feature, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it, Ortigo? that's not really like, I'm not going to be sharing my files with my associates, and they don't have to share them with me because I'm their QB.
Yeah, and I think well, and Cass can speak to this too, but I mean, for my situation, for a team, I definitely need that.
Okay. I think
so-
it's I think I didn't understand what it was used for, and so I was thinking about it. Okay, that's it on my questions. Thank you very much. Oh, but one last one, and I'm sorry, Dan,
No
is
worries.
you said you can go back to Transaction Desk and then back to Transact. When will Transaction Desk go away?
Right now, probably 2035. No, I'm just kidding. There
Well,
is
that's
no
good. I
target
might
date for that.
retire by then. Okay, so no plans.
Hopefully,
at
I'll
this
retire by
time.
then too.
So no plans at this time, because that was the big problem with rolling out Transact when it wasn't ready to do everything that Transaction does. And I realize Transact is very good broker business, office maintenance, file compliance, but it was definitely not user friendly for me as a broker in the field. Transaction Desk is very user friendly for me in the field. And frankly, I have other software that I use to manage my files and my compliance. So I never needed Transact for that. And I probably, I may or may not consider doing that. So I like the features in Transaction Desk that work very well for brokers in the field, in the trenches, doing business.
Beverly, it's Lisa. There
Hi,
is
Lisa.
no plans for end of life of Transaction Desk
Okay.
anytime soon. And we would
Thank you.
work in concert with the association to coordinate. We will look at all kinds of factors that are involved with that decision. So nothing short term by any means.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's the end of my questions. Sorry to dominate all this. Bye.
Thanks, Beverly. No, good stuff. Very helpful. Lisa, how about zip forms? I mean, I know we still have
Same
users
thing.
out there using zip forms. What's the plan there?
Same thing. No
Okay.
plans on end of life.
Okay. And people that are on zip forms, they will have the option to move over to Transact.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. They can today. Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, I've got a rapid fire list here, and if you've already answered some of these, I apologize. Mobile signing and in-person signing with Transact, Dan.
So mobile signing. So this uses Authentisign. So
Okay.
everything that you use in Authentisign today in Transaction Desk, it's the exact same application. We just wired it into Transact.
Okay.
So it's very mobile friendly. You can sign this on any type of device. And then when you say in-person signing, are you referring to signing the document yourself before sending it out? Or are you talking about like you have a tablet and you want them to sign on your
Yes, sir.
tablet?
Exactly that. You're sitting in front of the client, you've got a tablet, and you want to let them sign right there.
We have not introduced in-person signing. That was actually, I don't know if you noticed, we actually don't have that in AS2 either. Something we're always open to explore, but when we went from AS1 to AS2, at the time when we did some metrics, it was like 0.01% of all signings
Yeah.
were going through in-person signing. So we avoided it at the time, but we're always open to additional feature enhancements there.
Okay. I'm going to address Amy's question. So Amy asked a question here about tagging a document. So let's say you get a purchase agreement. There's not autofill. You've got just a flat PDF doc, and you need to go through and put the 25 initials on there. Is that a copy paste option? I think that's your question, Amy. Correct me if I'm wrong.
We don't have we do have copy paste, so you can copy an initial and then go down and paste on each page. There's also another thing you can do that might be even faster, is we have a feature called initial pages. So if you click that, you can actually choose how many initials you want to do. So like I can make them small, I can make them all right, I can put them at the bottom of the document, and then I can choose on the documents. That will actually put initials on every single page. And then at that point, you can just move them around. This might be easier than copy and pasting on all those pages.
And that just reminded me of something is template overlays. I know other platforms have template overlays. Is that something that's an option?
Oh, yep. Yeah, all of our forms are e-sign templated, so you can come over and add them there. And then you can also create your own layouts. So if
That's what I'm talking about. Yes, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So let's say I've got a lead-based paint that I got to download from MLS, and it's got whatever 3 or 4 initials and signatures, and I just want to set them up. So okay, got it.
Yeah, once you create, and then you could just apply those going in the future. So it's super easy to create and apply your template or your layouts.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then this is more of a yes or no email to, oh, go ahead, Amy. I'm sorry. Jump in.
No, that's fine. I mean, I use the initial pages, but like on the lead-based paint, if I have to drag and drop a text box 4 times to put my brokerage, address and QB name and all this kind of stuff, instead of just being able to click, like say text box once and then click through the page where I want that box, instead of having to go right to left, dragging and dropping every single time.
I think that's where those, what I'm calling a
You-
template
you-
overlay
you-
come in.
You can
Can
cut.
you
You can copy
copy them?
paste. Yeah.
Can't
See,
you?
see how I'm pasting them all over the place? You just
Yeah.
copy and then you could just Control C, Control V, and then you can
Okay,
paste them wherever
awesome.
you want.
Go ahead, Beverly.
No, that's what I was gonna say. So you don't have to drag and drop. You can just cut and paste or paste it into each spot. You can copy it and paste it into each slot, Amy.
Cool. All right.
But you
Yeah,
still have to
just
go
drop
to each
one on
slot.
there first. Yeah, and then you could just copy and paste.
Okay, thanks.
And then another, you may have said this one, but email to a transaction. Did we get a custom email address for every single transaction so we could forward some docs?
Yep, upload by
Okay, there we
email.
go. Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
this one came up pretty quick when we were rolling out Transact. People really wanted to forward their communications to that.
For sure. Okay. And then this is more, let's see, you've already addressed it, forms, transaction desk. I mean, one of the things we saw when we did our survey was members don't want us to move their cheese, right? They love what they have. They're fine with transaction desks, if they're using it. Many people won't want to. So that answered that. And then the one question that comes up a lot is our forms update, a few times a year, let's say, right, Beverly? Purchase agreement in
Oh,
particular.
just two, Tigo, just two.
Just two. We wish it was just two. Is timing of rolling out the forms. Because what'll happen is we'll have the rollout of the forms, we'll have a training by our attorney here, and then it's another month before you get it, and then there's another month after that before it uploads. And that's been one of the biggest complaints, is the timing of getting those forms uploaded and tagged. And the challenge we have is, we have 4 total platforms that are available here. Some of those platforms are getting it out in a day or two. So we've got some people using a version that's brand new, totally different. When we had our big change this year, that was a big problem. We have very, very different forms being used across the state. And so that's going to be one of our challenges, is making sure we can get our forms updated on a timely basis.
Yeah, I can add some flavor to that. I'm not sure, Lisa, if you wanted to add anything to that one.
Yeah, go ahead and I'll jump in.
So some of the things that we're doing there to improve the form design speed, and it will get faster and better, is one, as part of this whole process, we basically created this next-gen forms design tool. So it's like a web-based application, and then the idea is we want to centralize forms design. The goal is to eliminate all of our forms design processes, because when you think about it, we have TD that does a different forms design process. We have Zip Forms that does a different design process, and now we have Transact. We're basically retiring those legacy processes, consolidating it into one centralized process. So that in itself is going to improve it. Obviously, we need to keep working towards getting everyone mostly over to Transact so we can eventually retire those other processes. The other thing I want to mention as well is we are looking at some AI capabilities to help speed it up. Now, when I say this, I don't mean like writing contracts or anything like that. But what we're looking to do is putting the field overlay onto those documents a lot faster. So this is like one of those good AI use cases where you leverage AI to build the field overlay on top of the documents, because that's where the time-consuming part is. Like you take an input sheet that's like 5 pages. Sometimes those are several hundred fields. Just imagine someone sitting there dragging and dropping fields onto the page, naming them, making sure they're a date or a checkbox or whatever.
And they're done that, know all about it.
Yeah, yeah. That's where the lion's share of time comes in. And that's where we're going to help leverage that. And we're working towards that. We are getting better. But I
know in
recognize
the
that's been a problem.
contract, draft that we received, there's, timelines that are part of the contract. And I get that. And depending on, how many pages it is and all that. So I think it's just something that I know I've heard a lot of feedback on that one.
Yeah, and we most definitely put tighter restrictions and controls and delivery dates around the SLAs, and we have to meet it.
Got it.
And we can address it that way as well.
Is there any option to pick a release date? Any other states
Absol-
do that?
Absolutely,
That would actually probably be even helpful
yes,
if you choose a release date. If you say this is the date that it needs to go
absolutely.
on, that's easy to enforce.
Got it. Yeah, and that may and of course that's coordinated across again the 4 platforms the state uses right now. Okay, got it. That's super helpful. I need to ask that question to the other 3. Let's see what else. Oh, I remember. Okay, a lot of brokerages have their internal systems, right? You showed the compliance piece. It's great. It's fine. But many brokerages have their own system. They don't want you to use your system. They don't want to use Lone Wolf's system. They want to use whatever system they have. And so being able to move files from here to another place is a big deal. I know you have an API upgrade. Is that correct? And is there any work on making that available and more open, or is it only with the upgrade?
So the way the TD API access works, it's based off of like the client you're within. So right now, like imagine New Mexico as a client has every office user, everything kind of contained in there. As you upgrade or a brokerage upgrades, and there's other reasons why they might want to upgrade outside of that, especially if they span multiple MLS AORs. But that's where we would put them in their own little client box essentially, and we could wire in an API that way. And then that's where you could leverage that. We could always look into making that API more open. That's just the way it works today, for better or for worse. The other thing to mention there too, not everyone's going to be that technically savvy to leverage an API either. So one of the benefits, as funny as it sounds, just being able to email, I'm sure these other systems have email upload, unique emails as well. Just combining forms and documents together in one view, it also makes it really easy for agents to mail that paperwork to people as well. Because not every form needs to be signed. You may just want that PDF version. So that's another option that you could leverage to be able to email upload. Or in addition to that, as you export out these files, you could also export multiple files out at the same time. So today in TD, I can only do this one at a time. If I wanted to export 4 transactions out, for example, I could actually download those to my computer and then just upload them into another system. And then that's going to have everything to do with that transaction, which would be similar to like leveraging the API.
And so just to dig deeper on that, there's platforms like API Nation, Zapier, of course. Are those anything that you're considering participating with? Because again, I mean, in 2026, the fact that we have to move it, download it to a computer, upload it to another system just seems absurd.
It's we've worked with them in the past. We don't have them on our timeline in the next 2 or 3 months right now, but again, that's something that we can always work with you all on. We've been focused mainly more on just the form enhancements, like the stuff that Beverly was mentioning, like those little nice to haves that really make that experience. That's what we've been doubling down on lately. But that being said, we can always take a look at that. We're open to working with you on basically any of these feature enhancements.
Okay.
The nice part about Transact is think of it as like a fresh start, modern tech based, all new tech behind it. This is the moment where we can morph this into whatever we want. That's going to really drive this for the next decade.
Okay. And then, and I'm sorry, I have one more question, and then anybody else, please. I know we said an hour to an hour and a half, correct? So if anybody else has questions, please don't hesitate. I did want to talk about templates and with templates, and that just kind of understand what's available there. So an individual, as we call brokers, you call agents, they can create their own templates for themselves. But then if I want to create it for my office, is that for the entire brokerage? can I share templates to individual people? So in my situation, I have a team. I want to create a set of templates that I can share with, individual users. What are the options there?
Great question. So first and foremost, I believe am I still sharing?
Yes.
So here you can see the template creation screen. So as a broker or whoever has permissions to do it, like I'm attached to 2 offices or have 2 offices in my brokerage. So if I want a template for the east side, I can make a completely different template for them versus the west side. And then I could even go as far as like auto applying it, because today they still have to pick the template when they create the transaction. So if you always want this one template to apply on every purchase transaction, you have that, you can enforce that. There's no way they can get around it. In terms of sharing, we are looking to add the ability to share templates as well. So if I go and create a share group, I can create my own personal template and I could potentially share it with someone else in my office. That would work the same way as what you just described. If I want to just share it to a specific set of users, or if there's a team that's formed, they could create templates and share it with each other. That is something that we're actively working on. That's something that TD did not have, but that is something we're going to introduce. And then if I'm just my own agent and I want to create my own personal template, I have that capability as well. So everybody can create a template. It's just the office admin / broker staff that can enforce applying it to a transaction.
Great, thank you. Cass, did you have any questions about the TC sign-in, working within different folders or working for different people? Because you work across brokerage, not just across different individual brokers.
As we talked about in our PEG meeting earlier, I log in through my NARDS number through my own account with super user permission, and then access transaction desk from there. If that still applies to this new Transact, we don't have a problem. If it does, if I can no longer do that, that's going to be a problem. Because
when you log in, you're working as that individual broker, not as Cass.
I'm not even impersonating. I am working as that broker. When I log in, and I have a drop-down menu through Southwest MLS to access each individual agent and or brokerage that I work for.
Yeah, and you work for a separate brokerage all on your own. So that's the important thing, is that Cass has her own brokerage that services many other brokerages.
Yeah, so how that works today. So, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Are you on Flex or Matrix?
Flex.
Yeah, because Flex, like you are technically impersonating them because you're picking them in the drop down, then you're clicking the transaction desk tile, and then what's happening is Flex is single signing you into our platform as that broker. So you're no longer Cass when you come in to transaction desk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we also introduce is the ability to SSO in from TD directly into Transact. So if they've already signed up and did their Transact sign up flow, whatever, and they already have it linked, you'll actually be able to just go directly into their Transact account. So nothing changes there.
Perfect.
Because we just proxy the SSO through there.
Okay. That's the most important thing, that we can do that. And we don't have to log in separately under each broker's account. We want to avoid that completely.
And just since we're down this rabbit hole, one of the things I have a problem with that is that now there's no audit trail of who actually worked on that file. And so is there a way for use the word agent, shares their transaction with Cass so she can work on it, or the other way around? So there's actually each person is working as themselves.
From what I understand from talking to a few of these folks that are doing it, they're going in and doing things like updating the broker templates and doing a whole bunch of stuff with like the checklist and such. So what we'd have to do is we have 2 options. One, well, at least with the existing transaction desk platform, we need to work with Flex or Matrix to see if we can actually understand who's even impersonating who, so we can track you that way. Because the thing is we're trusting Flex or Matrix as the identity provider to come into that system. So that would be the first thing we go after. And we want to do that regardless for our next gen, because to get this off the ground, we had to proxy the single sign-on and some of the entitlements through transaction desk. So that way, you could just continue doing it the way you want to. But as we get closer, we're going to actually want to switch out those single sign-ons, and that's something that we're going to want to track. And then in the new version, we actually have different ways where you could come in and facilitate a similar workflow there. I'll have to talk offline to figure out how that best fits with your platform, but we do have kind of a transaction coordinator ecosystem. Here, I don't know if you can see it, but you see I have this concept of clients. We do have a way for TCs to actually get invited into multiple different clients, and this is kind of like the brokerages that they manage. They'd be able to flip back and forth between these ones, and they'd actually start stamping things into their name in
Okay,
terms of
that's
the
super
history.
helpful. That actually is kind of what we're looking at. Yeah. Okay. And then I'm sorry, I know we've gone. Amy and then Amberly.
Yeah, real quick, going back to Cass, when you log in as me to send out a document for signature,
Yes.
I don't understand why I can't see that then. So
You
if you're
can still see it.
it doesn't show up on my, like if you're sending something out for a signature, if I go into signatures, I don't see what you've sent. I only know what you sent 'cause it's telling
You're
me.
probably in like classic instead of the new signing.
Yeah.
So you have to toggle between those two to see the signings.
Oh, okay. All right. So the agent that you're impersonating will be able to see what you're sending out.
Yes, because it's actually your account, not me at all.
Yeah. I don't know why I haven't been able to see that, but I guess I'm just not in the right place. All right. Thank you.
Amberly?
Yes. So from the association standpoint and talking to agents all across the state, one of the biggest things I get is that there hasn't been clear communication from Lone Wolf on the fact that Transact is not a fully functioning platform yet. So I think a lot of our members think that it's fully functioning. You can do everything you need from there. But a lot of the issues that we have, and then talking with our agents, it seems like it's because they're in Transact and not in Transaction Desk that some things aren't working. So is there any plan to have some clear communication to members that this is not a fully functioning platform yet?
Yeah,
Is
I
it
can
maybe?
take it.
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, jump in. I'll follow.
Oh, I was going to say, maybe this is something that we can partner on in terms of defining that. Because if you ask someone, what is a fully functioning transaction management system, you're going to get a different response from anyone that you talk to. Same thing with like the feature parity. It has to be at feature parity. But again, that's something that's really subjective. Like, for
Okay.
example, we used to have faxing in the system. Do we bring it over to the new thing or do we leave it there? So that is something that we've been trying to figure out. And some of the strategies behind that is like, for example, we have these feedback tables. So every time you get prompted for feedback, please always leave a rating, be honest, give us your comments. Because what we do is we use that to look for patterns. And then whatever people are basically screaming about, that's what we prioritize next versus like the one-off thing that you might hear. That may not just get us to where we need to be. And, you look at TD and Zip too. Those things have been built over the last 30 years. It's really hard to simulate everything that's been in those things in such a short amount of time. So if you do have like a list of features or whatever, like we would really love to just partner with you on that, define what that is, and we'd be happy to send out any sort of communication, or at the very least tell you exactly when that's going to be released, and then even potentially relaunch some of these communications. Because I think the other thing that I've seen, at least in the feedback comments, I see quite a bit, there's no training. How do we get training on this or whatever? So that might be even something that we could partner on and potentially advertise more.
Yeah, and what I will follow up with, Amberly, is the fact that we are planning on doing a relaunch. So as Dan and the engineering team are adding new features and function, we need to do a better job of communication. So there's one more release we're waiting on, end of August, early September, and then we'll come back and say, okay, this is how we want to work with you. These are all the things that we've listened to. These are all the things that are here and available. And then, as Dan said, you would work with Sal on our team and we would set up customized trainings for the association. We can record those. You can send them out. We can do as many as you want. And we'll be more proactive in that as we move forward.
Perfect. And one more follow-up question on that. So I believe if you create a transaction in Transact, and for whatever reason there's issues with it, you can't get some functions, that agent is there's no way to see that transaction within transaction desk. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Correct. It's not backwards compatible. They would have to go back into TD and start over.
Okay, okay. And then one other question I had, I know we touched on the TC stuff, but one thing I really want to get a clear understanding of is when you have realtors that hold multiple licenses in New Mexico, how exactly are those members set up in Transaction Desk? And as they're logging into both of those offices they're working out of, is it all under just one account? Or how's that going to work within Transact?
Transact is proxies through TD. So whatever roster syncing processes we have in TD, we're just replicating the same thing over to Transact. And in terms of one of your examples there, now in this example of assuming that I have multiple licenses, do I have multiple NERDS IDs or do I have one NERDS ID?
You have one NERDS ID.
Okay, because what we do is we use the NERDS ID as a unique identifier. That way, when we create the account, like let's say we create you with NERDS ID 123, if you change offices or if you change your last name, whatever, that's how we know to update the existing account. So then we don't duplicate the account on you, because then you'd lose like all your templates and preferences and all that stuff. And then in terms of multi-office support, I was looking at the feed the other day. I didn't see anything in there that really keyed off of, oh, this person's part of all these multiple offices. Maybe that's something we could potentially look at.
Okay.
But nothing stops us from manually just adding you to those multiple offices, which I think is what we've been doing, at least since I've been here in 2014.
I think there's been multiple ways that Transaction Desk has done it. And at one point, we were told that these members needed to create a secondary office to be attached to those. So that's kind of the way I've been handling it. But that's not always the case. Sometimes they have access and they're not tied to this office. So I just want to make sure that there's a clear path moving forward on how we set these members up that have multiple licenses.
I can tell you that whatever TD does today, Transact can definitely support that area.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Thank
Amberly.
you,
Those
Dan.
are important questions for sure. Let's see. We've got you guys, a whole group here from Lone Wolf. I'm just wondering if there's anybody else from Lone Wolf that's got any things that they really like going, oh, we got to tell them this. I want to, and so if anybody from Lone Wolf has anything else they want to share, that'd be great.
I know I've done a lot of talking, but there's two things that I wanted to share.
Great. Thank you, Dan. No, I appreciate, no, I mean, I don't want to, I want to make sure we haven't missed anything.
Yeah, so two things, and I'm assuming this has probably showed up, or you probably heard this more on the staff side than anything, is one, when you go to hit try transact, today we'll ask you to create like that Lone Wolf account profile and get you logged in that way. By the end of the month, we're going to start looking at auto creating those. So anybody that goes to tries transact in the future, we're not going to make you go through that create account flow since it was confusing quite a bit of people. People said, I already have an account. Why am I creating another account? So we're going to eliminate that step. So we're hoping to get that support call away from your desk. The other thing that we're working on, this one I have a much looser time frame for, is the navigation of the experience. Most people don't know that the app switcher is up here, or the client concept, or how to navigate around. We are actively introducing, we're going to move to a complete, or like a left-hand nav menu, where we're just going to show you all the options on the table. And then in that left-hand menu, we'll actually have an option for Transaction Desk and Zip Forms. That way, when they try it, it's really intuitive on how to get back to it. Because I'm assuming you've also gotten those phone calls. Hey, I've tried it and I don't know how to get back. So those are the two things that we're going after because we know those are friction points.
That's great news, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah, usually when I see the white flag coming from you all, that's when I know we got to do something.
Oh, we appreciate that. Ashley, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in really quick. That we appreciate everything, the partnership that we've had over the couple of years. I think on the transaction desk side as well on the Zip Form side is kind of a unique thing with like two platforms. But we are here to support you. Like we have a slew of people on our side that we want to make sure you guys have what you need, that you guys feel like you have a voice in anything that like the requests, enhancements, anything at all. We're happy to handle like the trainings as well. We have a whole team prepared to do that. Any marketing needs, I know Lisa mentioned the kind of like a relaunch of that. We will absolutely get that over to you, and we feel we're ready to start moving towards those next steps. But we also can create additional materials if there's something specific that you're looking for. Cody is going to be your point person. Sale here has that like kind of like a white glove service that we're here to provide you as well, to make sure it's smooth for you all. Your phones aren't ringing, that members are aware of everything, and just make sure that we are collaborating together to make it as easy and seamless as possible.
Thank you, Ashley.
Great. Thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
Something we didn't ask Dan, and I know it's in the RFP, but the uptime and just technology. I mean, obviously, when your transaction platform goes down and you're trying to get an offer out on a competitive deal, you just lose your mind. So what? I mean, has anything changed? You said you've got a new tech stack. Is anything changed with Transact from the other platforms?
I'm so glad you asked me this question because I love talking technical stuff. So with TD and Zip, they're on an older code base. They're what you would call monolith applications. So what that means is like everything to do with TD is one service. If something goes down in TD, the whole thing goes down. With this approach, what we did is, first of all, everything's on the cloud. We use Microsoft Azure to host all of this stuff. It's zone redundant, and that's just a fancy way of saying if Microsoft does something, we're still alive in this region, and that way we continue serving the application. It's really hard to take it down. And then this is also what we call a service-oriented architecture. And what I mean by that, and I don't know if you all caught it while I was navigating the URLs, but here I'm in Transact Workflow. But if I open Forms Editor, the URL goes to Forms Editor. If I go into Authentisign, I'm going into Authentisign. So if one of these start behaving or acting up, it's not going to take down the entire experience. And then to just kind of finalize that, all of these are run on what we call Kubernetes. And I don't know if anyone's heard that term before. It's just a really fancy way to manage resources. So we have high alerts set up on this thing. I don't think I've seen any of this go down yet on the next gen stuff. So I have high confidence that whatever uptime is in there, we'll be easily able to keep that.
Great. Thank you for that.
I didn't go too technical, but I could definitely.
No, that's fine.
I could spend an hour talking about that.
I hear what you're talking about. And again, that's, we've had two of, I know Transaction Desk was down here not too long ago for a little bit. And then our Dotloop, which is another provider, was down. And of course, all the Facebook groups blew up, so for brokers trying to do deals.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? We really appreciate everybody that joined in here. And of course, anything else? Last chance.
Looks good on our side.
Okay. David, anything closing words if you're still there?
Nothing on my end, nothing on my end, Tigo. Just want to thank everyone for joining today and participating, and thanks to the Lone Wolf team for their presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks for the time.
We appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you guys. We'll see you at the annual
Thank you.
event.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.